Hi, fifth grade. Welcome back to another day of math class. This is Miss Harvey, and today we are going to be doing our math lesson together. Today is Tuesday, May 5th, and so we are going to be doing Tuesday's lesson. I'm going to go over the things that you need to be prepared to watch this video and then give you some time to get those things ready. You should have open Tuesday's lesson that is in the Distance Learning Google Drive. It should say Problem Solving Task 5.6.4. You should have a piece of scratch paper to write down your answers, and you should have a writing utensil. When you are ready and have all of those items, you should come back to the video to continue the lesson. So if you're continuing this video, that means that you have your problem solving tasks and your packet open in a separate tab other than this video. You have your scratch paper and you have your writing utensil. If you don't have all of those things ready, pause the video again and go and grab those things and get them ready. For today's problem-solving task, you have two questions that you're going to be answering. You're solving both of the questions in the problem-solving task and then coming back to the video to check your answer. Make sure that you are actually writing down your answers on paper so that you actually have answers ready to share with the video and work to revise if you need to revise it. Pause the video here to work on your problem-solving task. So you're continuing this video because you solved the problem-solving task and you're ready to discuss your answers. For the first problem, it says, Jefferson and Nyla are arguing over who answered their homework correctly. Look at their work below and decide who was correct, and then explain your answer. For their homework, they had to write the expression for divide the difference between 54 and 16 by 2. Jefferson's work was here, and then Nyla's work was below. So our job is to use the phrase that we were given to determine what the expression should look like so that we can figure out whether or not Jefferson was correct or Nyla was correct. So I want to hear from you guys. What was your first step in understanding this problem and being able to solve? So your first step should have been to reread the phrase and try and understand exactly what the phrase is saying. So for our phrase, we have divide the difference between 54 and 16 by 2. So first, let's go ahead and look in our phrase for keywords that tell us what operations we're going to be doing. So based on the phrase, what operations do you know we're going to do? Right, I see the word divide, which tells me that there's going to be division involved. Do you see any other keywords? Good, I also see the word difference. And the word difference is telling us that we're going to be subtracting. So we know the operations involved in this expression are going to be division and subtraction. Now we need to do the thinking of what is being divided and what are we taking the difference between. So I want you to reread the phrase and then I want you to try and answer that. What are we taking the difference between and what are we dividing according to this phrase? So what did you guys think after you went back and reread the phrase? Well, if you're not sure, let's go through it together. So our phrase says to divide the difference between 54 and 16 by 2. So first it's telling us to divide, but we have to figure out what exactly it wants us to divide. And the phrase is saying to divide the difference between 54 and 16. And we're going to divide that difference by 2. So that tells us that first we need to be able to find the difference between 54 and 16, and then we'll be able to take that and divide it by 2. So based on this phrase, what's being split in 2 is the difference of 54 and 16. So that means first we need to do the subtraction and then we can divide. So the expression that we choose as correct has to show that. It has to show that first you're doing the subtraction between 54 and 16, and then you're dividing that answer by 2. So you may be asking yourself, how do I make sure that my expression shows what to do first and what to do after? So when we are writing expressions, the way that we show what to do first is by grouping it in a parentheses. So we use parentheses in our expressions in order to tell the reader what goes together or what happens first. And it shows that doing that operation is a priority. So now that we've learned that, I want you to take a look back at Jefferson and Nyla's work, and I want you to determine which expression matches the phrase correctly. I'm going to give you a minute to revise your work. Come back to the video when you're ready to continue talking about the PST. So one strategy that you can use when you're trying to determine an expression from a phrase is you can mark up the phrase for the different things that you need to remember. So we've already started doing that. On our phrase, we underline the word divide and put a division symbol. We underline the word difference and we put subtraction. So we're marking up the phrase so that we remember exactly what we need to do. And we just went over the fact that first in our expression, we need to find the difference between 54 and 16 before we can divide that difference by 2. So a strategy that you can use is you can put parentheses around what goes first in your phrase so that you remember what to look for in parentheses in your expression. So we just said that first you need to find the difference between 54 and 16. So I'm going to go ahead and put parentheses around 54 and 16, and I'm going to put a subtraction sign there because I know I'm finding the difference between those two terms. That means I'm subtracting. And our phrase also said to divide the difference by 2. So after that parentheses, I'm going to remember that I need to have division happening and that I'm dividing by 2. So by using this phrase and marking it up, I'm going to be better able to answer the question accurately because it's like writing notes when you're reading or when you're planning to write about a text. Marking it up and getting your ideas down on paper instead of trying to do it all in your head is just going to be beneficial. So what did you guys think about Jefferson's and Nyla's work based on everything we've talked about? Who was correct and why? So for this first problem, Nyla is correct because her expression does what we call showing order. Her expression shows you what you need to do first because she used parentheses to show priority. Nyla's expression shows that first you must subtract 54 and 16, and then you divide that difference by 2. So the reason why Nyla correctly matched her expression to the phrase is because she used parentheses to show order. Her parentheses show us what to do first and what to do second. Jefferson's expression does not do that. Jefferson did not use parentheses, so if somebody was reading Jefferson's expression, they wouldn't know where to start and they wouldn't know what to do first. They don't know if they're going to do 54 divided by 16 or 54 divided by the difference of 16 and 2. So by not using parentheses, Jefferson left the reader very confused on what to do and how to solve this expression. Also, Jefferson has incorrect operations associated with numbers. So I can tell that Jefferson probably didn't do what we did with marking up the phrase first. Jefferson probably didn't underline keywords, and Jefferson probably did not think about what was being divided and what was being subtracted. So there's a combination of things here that you needed to do in order to be successful. First, you needed to reread the phrase and determine what operations were happening. And then we thought about what was being divided and what was being subtracted. And last, we determined what needed to happen first in our expression so that we knew what to put parentheses around. So right now, I want you to try to explain in your own words, what's the difference between Nyla's work and Jefferson's work, and why is Nyla correct? So if you took the time to try and explain that in your own words, you're definitely on the right track to being able to master this content so that you're more prepared to take your exit ticket quiz. The second problem in your PST wanted you to apply what we just talked about. So I want you to go back to what you wrote down for number 2, and now, based on what you just learned, I want you to revise it. Write an expression for 4 more than the product of 12 and x. And when you're done revising your work, come back to this video to check your work. So like we talked about in number 1, your first step here should be to reread the phrase to understand what operations are happening in the phrase. So our phrase says 4 more than the product of 12 and x. What keywords in this phrase tell you the operations you're going to be doing? The word more tells us that we're going to be doing addition. Are there any other words? The word product tells us that we are going to be doing multiplication. So now we need to think about what are we going to be adding and what are we going to be multiplying? 4 more than the product of 12 and x. What are your thoughts? So I know I'm going to be adding 4 to something. So next to this plus sign, I'm going to go ahead and rewrite the number 4. So I know I'm doing 4 plus, but I don't know what I'm adding 4 to yet. 4 more than the product of 12 and x. So based on this last part of the phrase, the product of 12 and x, I know that I'm going to be multiplying 12 and x. So I'm going to go ahead and write that down. Notice how I'm not going to use the multiplication sign that we're accustomed to, because here I'm multiplying by a variable and I don't want it to be confusing. So I'm putting 12 asterisk x. So I know that I'm adding 4 to the product of 12 and x. But if we just write our phrase or our expression the way it is, the reader would not know what to do first. So now I want you to think about what should happen first in order for our expression to match our phrase. Before we can add 4 to anything, we need to know the product of 12 and x. So we need to put a parentheses around 12 times x because that's what needs to happen first. First, we multiply 12 and x, and then we can get our product so that we can add our product to 4. By using parentheses here, we're showing what needs to happen first, and we're showing priority. Multiplying 12 and x has priority because we need to know the product of 12 and x in order to be able to add it to 4. So, in order to figure out the expression that matched this phrase, we had to do some very close reading. So that means that if you're reading these phrases too quickly, then you'll probably miss understanding what needs to happen first and what needs to be grouped together. So by taking our time and annotating this phrase, we were able to figure out that first you need to find the product of 12 and x, and then you add that product to 4. So your expression could have been written one of two ways. Parentheses 12 times x, close parentheses, plus 4, or 4 plus, open parentheses, 12 times x, close parentheses. It does not matter whether or not the parentheses came in the beginning of your expression or at the end of the expression. And I want you to think about why. Based on what parentheses show us, why do you think that it didn't matter whether or not I put it first or put it second? Because parentheses tell the reader what to do first, no matter where it is in the expression, they're always going to know to go to the parentheses first. So whether or not they see the parentheses as the first thing in the expression, or whether or not it's the last thing in the expression, they know that whatever is in the parentheses always has to happen first. You have to solve it first. So I know in both of these expressions, because I see 12 times x in parentheses, I know I have to solve 12 times x first, and then I can add 4. So parentheses are super important because they tell your reader exactly what to do and how to do it. They show priority and they show your reader what needs to happen first. Now we're going to take some notes based on what we just learned together in math class. So today in math class, we learned that we show grouping in math with parentheses. Parentheses tell you, as the reader, what to do first. For example, with this expression, a phrase that would match the expression is 5 added to the product of y and 3. Our parentheses tell us that first you multiply y and 3, and then you add 5. Pause the video here to jot down your notes or to copy them onto a separate document for yourself so that you have them for your use in today's exit ticket and in lessons moving forward. Now that you've taken your notes, I want you to go ahead and try the guided practice. Do numbers 1 through 4, trying to write the expression that matches each phrase. And when you're done, come back to the video to check your work. Let's go over the guided practice together so that you can check your work. We were given phrases and we needed to write expressions that matched. So I want you to think back to what we did in our PST. Whenever you're given a phrase and you're writing an expression to match, what should you do on your paper in order to help you write the correct expression? Right, we need to annotate the phrase and we need to be able to pick out the words that tell us what operations we're doing. And then we need to determine what is going to be grouped together and what is going to be inside of the parentheses. So in number 1, it says the quotient of 2 and 3 minus p. First, I want you to tell me the keywords that tell you what operation we're going to be doing. The word quotient tells us that we're going to be doing division. And the word minus tells us that we're going to be doing subtraction. So now we need to think about what is being divided and what is being subtracted. The quotient of 2 and 3 minus p. So here, the phrase is telling us that we are taking the quotient of 2 and 3. So I know that my parentheses need to go around 2 and 3 because they're going to be grouped together. And since I'm figuring out the quotient of 2 and 3, I know that division is going to be happening there. The word minus tells us that we're going to be subtracting, and what we're going to be subtracting is p. So based on this phrase, what needs to happen first is 2 divided by 3, and then we're going to subtract that quotient by p. So the expression that matches this could be written as such. Open parentheses, 2 divided by 3, close parentheses, minus p. The parentheses tell me what is happening first, 2 divided by 3, and then I know that after I do that division, I need to subtract p. Notice that I'm writing my division by using the slash. It is the same exact thing because it's a fraction bar and we know that fractions are the same as division. So I can use either sign to show division. Number 2 says 16 divided by the sum of 4 and a number v. What are the keywords that tell you the operation? The word divided tells us, of course, that we're going to be doing division. Nice job. And the word sum tells us that we're going to be doing addition. So now I want you to think carefully, what is being divided and what is being added? So in our phrase, it says that 16 is being divided by something. So I know that my phrase is going to consist, or my expression is going to consist of 16 divided by, but we don't know exactly what. Then it says the sum of 4 and a number v. Sum tells us that we're going to be doing addition. And since it says the sum of 4 and a number v, that tells me that we are going to be adding 4 plus the variable v. So last, I need to determine what's going to happen first. Am I going to divide 16 first, or am I going to find the sum of 4 and v first? What do you think? Right. First, you need to find the sum of 4 and a number v, so that you can then divide 16 by that sum. Because if you don't find the sum of 4 and v, you won't be able to divide 16 by a divisor. So we need to show priority over adding 4 and v. And the way that we do that is by using parentheses. Your expression should look like this. 16 divided by the sum of 4 plus v, and 4 plus v needs to be in parentheses. Number 3. The difference between 7 and the product of 1 and y. Let's hear what you guys think. So for number 3, the word difference tells us that we're going to be doing subtraction, and the word product tells us that we're going to be doing multiplication. So now we need to think, what are we subtracting and what are we multiplying? So the phrase says the difference between 7 and the product of 1 and y. So I know I'm finding the difference between 7 and something, but I don't know what yet. So I can write 7 minus, but that's all I know just yet. The rest of the phrase says, the product of 1 and y. So because it says the product of, I know that I'm going to be multiplying 1 and y. Here, I need to show order by using parentheses. And the way that I can do that is by putting parentheses around 1 times y. I need to multiply 1 and y first before I'll be able to subtract it from 7. So my expression should look like this. 7 minus parentheses 1 times y, showing that I'm subtracting the product of 1 and y from 7. First, I need to find the product of 1 and y before I can subtract it from 7. Last one. 6 less than the quotient of 6 and g. As I'm annotating this phrase, I notice that I see the words less and quotient. The word less tells me that I'm going to be doing subtraction, and the word quotient tells me that I'm going to be doing division. Next, I need to think about what is being subtracted and what is being divided. 6 less than the quotient of 6 and g. So I know I'm going to be subtracting something by 6 because it says 6 less than. So I need to figure out what I'm going to be subtracting by 6. It says the quotient of 6 and g. So I know automatically that I need to be dividing 6 and g. In order for me to find 6 less than the quotient of 6 and g, I need to first do 6 divided by g. So my parentheses is going to need to go around 6 divided by g. And then if I want to find what is 6 less than that means I have to subtract 6 from it. So it's super important that subtracting 6 goes second. Because here, when we're doing subtraction, we know that order definitely matters. So I need to make sure that I really carefully think about what I am subtracting 6 from. Your expression should look like this. Parentheses 6 divided by g minus 6. This shows that first I am dividing 6 and g, and then I'm subtracting 6 from it. And that will tell me what is 6 less than the quotient of 6 and g. Similar to what we've done since we started this unit, you're going to try the rest of the practice problems independently. It's super important that you try these problems, guys, because if you don't, you're not going to be able to get all the practice you need in order to really understand this. And then you'll probably take the exit ticket quiz and you probably won't do well. So please make sure that you take the time to do these practice questions and then to carefully check your work so that you feel as prepared as possible to take the quiz at the end. Go ahead and work through questions 1 through 5 on your own, and then come back to the video to check your answers against mine. You should only be moving on if you have actually finished the independent practice and are ready to check your answers. If you have done that, then you can go ahead and pause the video to check your work against mine. But if you have not done these 5 questions independently, go back and complete them so that you are ready to take the exit ticket quiz. As you're checking your work against mine, make sure that you have correctly marked up your answer choices and use the annotating skills that we talked about. If you correctly annotated your work, then it should look something like mine, where all of the keywords that tell you operations are underlined, and you marked up your phrases for where your parentheses should be. As you're going back, if you got any questions incorrect, go back and try and revise them. Take a second chance at them in order to have more practice and feel more confident with your work. Today's secret code for your math exit ticket quiz is BABY, B-A-B-Y, baby, B-A-B-Y. Once you are done checking your work and revising your work for the second page of practice problems, you should go ahead and complete your exit ticket quiz for today. Make sure to use your notes for your exit ticket quiz, and make sure to reach out to your teacher if you're feeling like you need a conference, either before you take the quiz or after you take the quiz.